We begin tonight with the latest on the assassination of 31-year-old conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kirk, a prominent ally of President Trump, was shot in the neck while addressing a crowd at Utah Valley University. Cell phone videos show him collapsing moments after responding to a question about gun violence. Law enforcement officials say the sniper who assassinated Kirk is believed to have jumped off a roof and fled into a neighborhood after firing one shot. The FBI said today that officials have recovered a high-powered rifle from the scene.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. So the FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation.
The FBI has released an image of a person of interest and are asking the public for help. Utah Governor Spencer Cox spoke to the media yesterday, calling it a tragic day for our nation.
This is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. We are celebrating 250 years of the founding of this great nation. That founding document, the Declaration of Independence, that this great experiment on which we embarked together 250 years ago, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. The first one of those is life. And today, a life was taken. Charlie Kirk was first and foremost a husband and a dad to two young children. He was also very much politically involved, and that's why he was here on campus. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. Historically, our university campuses in this nation and here in the state of Utah have been the place where truth and ideas are formulated and debated. And that's what he does. He comes on college campuses and he debates. That is foundational to the formation of our country, to our most basic constitutional rights. And when someone takes the life of a person because of their ideas or their ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened.
The killing is the latest in a troubling rise in political violence across the country. The public assassination has sparked wide reaction from politicians in the United States.
This is horrific. This is awful. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk risks an uncorking of political chaos. Are we going to do something, or are we going to argue over rhetoric? That is my question about this. We have to pass gun safety legislation and stop this.
And remember, we're Americans, and you can disagree in a way that doesn't end in a horrible way today did.
And it shouldn't matter what your political views are. You should be able to state in America whatever you feel.
A couple Republicans just came down these steps and said that it's Democrats' fault that this happened. Your response to that?
I think on a day when this young man has lost his life and his family is grieving, to be talking about the politics of this is just so inappropriate.
We should all resist the temptation just to point fingers. That takes us nowhere. We should be rejecting gun violence and political violence in all of their forms, regardless of who the target is.
And while speaking today at the Pentagon, President Trump addressed the passing of Charlie Kirk and announced that he will award Mr. Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Before we begin, let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk, I felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd. Very, very big.
Trump has ordered all U.S. flags be flown at half-staff through Sunday. I'm now joined by Andrew Donaldson, editor at OrdinaryTimes.com, to get his perspective on the killing of Charlie Kirk and what it says about the rising tide of political violence in America. Andrew, thank you so much for the time today.
Glad to be with you, Teresa.
Now, there is now a long list of politically motivated violent acts in the United States. How did America get to this point where public figures are so regularly targeted?
Well, history is littered with political violence. We've just been very, very fortunate the last generation or so where most of it was close calls or stopped ahead of time or caught. Even the attempted assassination of President Trump a couple of years ago. And lately, they have been successful. We had the murder of the sitting state senator up in Minnesota and another person wounded. And now this is on top of some other, you could call political violence. It is a disturbing trend, but we've also kind of kidded ourselves into thinking that this isn't normal when history says it's normal. But now with the social media age, we're starting to get into an area kind of like the 60s and early 70s in the US where violence was a lot more prevalent, and it's a disturbing trend.
Now, let's get into what we know today. The FBI said it recovered a rifle believed to be the murder weapon. Given what we know so far with the type, placement, and the use of the weapon, what do we know about what the suspect was planning, the intent, and possible training of the shooter?
Not much. We need the shooter for that. But if you're going to do what's been told to us is the information that it was about a 200-yard shot from a roof, an elevated position from that kind of an area in an open area, you would automatically think this is going to be some kind of a scoped rifle. And the bolt action rifle, especially like a 30-06 caliber or higher, that's pretty much been standard issue long range for everything from hunters to the U.S. military snipers for over 100 years. So if you just said that in the abstract, that's pretty much the weapon you would expect. Now, once we get the suspect, we'll learn a lot more about it. But that fits exactly what we saw in that horrible video.
Now, early this afternoon, the FBI had said that they had a photo of a person of interest, and they actually released it to the public, asking for help in finding who this was with a $100,000 reward. What does this tell us about how close they are to finding the shooter?
Well, we would hope that they have a lot more information than what they're releasing to us, but it means they are looking. It also means that they have a lot of details about this suspect that they don't know. And it means that they've probably been scouring all sorts of social media, security cam footage, things like this to try to find some good images of the suspect. And this might be the best image they have. If that's the case, it's going to be a bit of a long haul because this is not a great image. This has got a lot of granularity to it. You already have people putting it out on AI and trying to manipulate this image. This is probably telling us that they're not that close to identifying this person, and they need to quickly. We need this suspect under wraps very quickly, and it looks like we're not super close to that, but hopefully they know more about it than what they're releasing to us.
Well, and on that, the FBI did say that they do have a video, but they're hesitant to release it to the public. What would be the reason that they're choosing to not release that footage?
And they should be, because if anybody's watched any kind of police procedural, you don't want that information public because you want to get the suspect in, interrogate them, let them trip themselves up, and then reveal to them that you have that information. In fact, there's a bit of pushback online to certain quarters when they release that they have things like impressions from handprints, forearm prints, footprints. That's information you probably want to hold back, but they've already released it. So there's been a few things in this investigation. The comments of FBI Director Kash Patel, who said they had him, then they had to release a suspect, then they had another suspect and release it back. There's been a couple little breadcrumbs in this investigation that cause concern, but yeah, they should be holding back information if it's something they can use if they do get a suspect that's alive.
Now, I want to get into who Charlie Kirk was. Just how important was he to the Republican Party?
You don't want to say anybody's indispensable, but the Trump era, he's about as close as you can get. And all you need to know is the way it was treated. The president gave an Oval Office address within hours of his death. Foreign heads of state, like the prime ministers of Israel and Italy, did personalized messaging. We have the flags down at half staff at the president's direction. That's telling you how much he meant to this party and this president and this administration. He was hugely important, not just for his talking heading and that sort of thing, but his organizational ability, his fundraising ability, the way he connected with the youth movement, that sort of thing. It's hard to see somebody individually replacing what he's been to this party for the last 10 years or so.
Now, Andrew, we do just have to go to break, but we will continue this conversation when we get back. I'm again joined by Andrew Donaldson, an editor at ordinarytimes.com. And Andrew, before the break, we talked about Charlie Kirk and how important he was to the Republican Party. But I want to move on and talk about beyond traditional GOP power structures. How significant was Kirk's influence among the rising generation of right-wing influencers, donors, and activists, the people who may shape the Republican Party in the next decade?
Yeah, it's funny you phrase it that way because that's exactly what he did. People have talked about youth movements being one of the power structures of a political party. He's one of the first people in at least my lifetime to actually do it. He is enormously influential with young people. He, in a very short amount of time, took over all the various youth organizations, supplanted them with Turning Point USA, and he was pretty much the pipeline for all youth movement into the GOP, MAGA, the Trumpian wing of the party, whatever you want to call it. If you're under 30 years old, under 35 years old, that time frame, and you're a Senate staffer, a House staffer, any kind of a comms person, if you're a content creator, if you're on radio, TV, podcasting, anything in that sphere of influence for the GOP or MAGA or the Trumpian side of the ledger, you probably came through the TPUSA organization. This is enormously influential. An entire generation and the folks that are going to follow what we're always talking about, who comes after Trump, these are the folks that are going to come after Trump. And they just had their hero and the person who, for most of them, gave them their pipeline into political commentary and political access get murdered. This is going to be a groundswell reaction by these folks because this is going to be seminal to them. Charlie Kirk was that important to the under 30, under 35 group of the GOP right now.
And one of Kirk's hallmarks was open debate and free expression. What does that killing say about the U.S. And just the open debate in the U.S. about how people are allowed to speak out, but when they do, things like this happen?
Yeah, and again, we're going to have to figure out the motivation of this shooter if we ever find out what it is, whether it was completely politically motivated or a crazy person or whatever the case may be. But yes, you can already say this was political because of who he is and because of the reaction that is going to come from this. He did do the open debate. He was doing his prove me wrong thing. He was sitting under a tent with prove me wrong written on it when he was tragically shot and horrifically murdered. So yeah, this does say something to that because he's one of the people that, yes, he said a lot of controversial things. He said a lot of things maybe he shouldn't have, but he put himself out there. He put his name on it and he was in public and you could step up to him and say it and debate back and forth. And that's actually, whether you like the way he did it or not, the ideal for a free speech society. And if we're getting to the place where violence stops that, that's a dark place we don't want to be in, regardless of what you think about Charlie Kirk, his politics, or the way he produced it. Being able to speak publicly, having those open debates, that's what a free society should be doing, and violence has no place in that.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for the time today, and thank you for breaking that down for us.
Anytime, Teresa. Thank you very much for the time.